What's up, guys? It's Rob here, and today we need to talk about cannabis stocks, mainly sundial, tilray, aurora cannabis, canopy growth, hexo, mjna, all kinds of cannabis stocks. This is news that affects all of them. Every stock that's involved in cannabis is likely to be benefiting from some of the things that we're going to talk about in this video over the coming months, because as you all know, there is a legalization bill on the horizon that would greatly benefit cannabis stocks if it were to pass, and hopefully it will. Especially if you're holding any of those stocks, you're probably hoping that that bill will pass. Now, there are some other catalysts that could be moving these stocks up, some other catalysts that could also be making it more likely that we could see full-fledged recreational cannabis legalization in the United States. And we're going to be talking about some of those and how they apply to the current cannabis environment and how that could be affecting all of these cannabis stocks. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about, we already briefly mentioned in another video. It is a Cannabis Bill, the first piece of standalone congressional cannabis reform legislation to reach the Oval Office, or at least it's expected to reach the Oval Office. It is titled the Medical Marijuana and Cannabis Research Expansion Act. This bill is expected to be voted on tomorrow in the House on Tuesday, and the Senate, who has already passed a previous version of this bill, is expected to pass this bill again once it passes the House, meaning that this bill would be likely to reach the president's desk. And Biden has spoken on his stance towards not just recreational cannabis, where he's not as friendly, but also towards cannabis research, where he seems to be more of a proponent for that. And so it's expected that he will actually sign this bill into law. And all in all, that would be a very impressive move on the cannabis legalization front. If we could get senators and members of the House and the president all working together to actually pass pro-cannabis legislation, that would mean it's much more likely that they'd be likely to do the same thing in the future. And overall, that would be very good for these cannabis stocks. So this is the first piece of news. The second thing that we've got to talk about is actually more directly related to actual full-fledged cannabis legalization. Now, senators on a key judiciary subcommittee are set to hold a cannabis reform hearing on Tuesday, so tomorrow also. And at this hearing, they're having a couple of speakers, both for and against cannabis legalization. One pro speaker is a past cannabis prisoner, and a speaker against, an anti-cannabis speaker, is actually Alex Berenson. And, I read this headline, and I realized that I'd heard the name before, and that he was actually a speaker on Joe Rogan, on the Joe Rogan Experience. And I listened to this podcast in the past. I remembered him being a somewhat eloquent speaker and a good speaker. So, unfortunately, he will be taking an anti-cannabis stance. Now, it's interesting to note that he is a former New York Times reporter who has, in the past, been banned from Twitter for claims he made about the vaccine and the pandemic. And he's an interesting choice to be arguing against cannabis reform. So we're going to see what happens at that hearing tomorrow. Hopefully there won't be too much anti-cannabis talk. It's going to be a debate, so I expect some of it will happen. But all in all, that'll be something to watch out for, the results of that. Now, the last thing, the Senate confirms a key Veterans Affairs official who in the past expanded New Jersey's medical marijuana program and backs federal legalization. Another step in the right direction, essentially showing that the Senate is not afraid to vote people into positions of power when they've in the past expressed liking for cannabis, or at least a liking for cannabis legalization. All in all, this is a positive direction for the Senate to be moving in, for them to not be afraid to put people in positions of power when they have expressed positive views of cannabis in the past, means that they might not look down on those people for those reasons, and would thus potentially be more likely to actually enact pro-cannabis legislation in the future, which is exactly what we're hoping they'll do, which could be serving these stocks, mainly sundial, tilray, mjna, aurora cannabis, canopy growth. All of these cannabis stocks will benefit most likely from expansions in cannabis legislation. The farther they become from illegal substances and companies that aren't necessarily accepted in the United States, they can't bank in the United States, the more likely they're to do well in the future, the better their businesses are going to be. And all in all, the higher their stock prices can go, in my opinion. Now, obviously, that's not financial advice. That's just my opinion on these stocks. I think that we are, unfortunately, if you look at any of these stock charts, we are at a low point for a lot of these stocks. They've just been getting hammered, moving down and down and down. A lot of these stocks just getting slammed over the past year, as have a lot of stocks in the stock market, but especially cannabis stocks. And I think it's high time that we do see some reform on the cannabis space and that these stocks can actually start to perform better. I overall have been buying the dip on these. I expect that we will see higher prices, at least from where we are now. Hopefully all-time highs if we do end up seeing legalization, not necessarily all-time highs in terms of stock price, but potentially in terms of market cap. That could be a good thing. Unfortunately, some of these companies have diluted And, it would be maybe unrealistic to see all-time high stock prices. That's what they had to do to stay in business, to raise some capital. But overall, we could certainly see these stocks performing much better than they have over the past many months if we continue to see positive directions in the cannabis legalization space. And that's just a quick update for today, letting you guys know what's going on in the world of legalization, what's going on for these cannabis stocks. And other than that, guys, if you appreciate it, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Keep in mind, none of this is financial advice. It's just my opinion and some news of what's going on. And other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.